Welcome to Yawn of Ages. Here we leave behind the noisy world and drift gently into the quiet corners of the past. Here, the stories are soft, the pace is slow, and nothing is urgent. You can listen or simply let the words wash past as you fall asleep. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, you're always welcome to subscribe and join me for more sleepy stories of forgotten places and quiet moments in history. For now, just relax, get comfortable, and let's begin. Tonight, we're going to explore a part of the past that is often told with drama and darkness, but we will walk through it calmly like a lantern in a quiet room. Our story is not about fear, but about life. Not the kind of life that history books focus on, but the little things, the daily things. We'll talk about how people went on with their days, how they lit their lamps and baked their bread, how they whispered to loved ones in the quiet, how they adapted, how they remembered, and how they slowly began again. This is a story about how the plague changed daily life. But it is not a story of endings. It is a story of slow change, of quiet survival, and of the little things that never made it into the grand tales of kings and battles. So now take a deep breath. Feel your shoulders soften. Let your jaw relax. You don't have to remember everything. You don't have to focus too hard. Just let the words flow gently like water. Long before the whispers of illness reached the hills and markets, people were simply living. Imagine a village in the 1340s. The sun rises not with fanfare, but with a slow spill of gold across the fields. Roosters call softly. The thatched roofs glisten with dew. A baker stirs from slumber, stretching before reaching for the coarse flour sack. Children are stirring in loft beds. The smell of morning smoke rises through open chimneys. Someone is already drawing water from the well. It's early, but the world is already turning. Shops open. Carpenters hum while smoothing timber. A woman feeds chickens, scattering seeds with a rhythmic flick of the wrist. It is ordinary, comfortingly so. In the town square, there is gossip. Not of illness, but of the price of wool, of someone's daughter who may be betrothed, of the tanner whose dog chased the priest's geese. These are the days that history often forgets, but they are the days people truly lived. Life had a rhythm then. It moved with the seasons, not with clocks. Spring brought muddy roads and the first greens. Summer gave long days and aching backs from the fields. Autumn smelled of firewood and apples. Winter curled people inward into hearth-lit rooms and quiet wool-wrapped hours. People knew the days by feel. They knew when to dig, when to shear sheep, when to patch roofs. Mealtime was simple. A pot simmered over a central hearth. Bread was torn, not sliced. Turnips, beans, onions. If there was meat, it was a cause for quiet celebration. In the evening, the village dimmed. Candles were precious, and oil cost silver. Shadows lengthened. People told stories, not because they were bored, but because stories warmed the dark. They reminded them who they were. No one called it a golden age, but for many, it was simply home. The homes were small but full. A cottage might house 3 generations. Grandparents dozing near the fire, children curled together under wool, parents rising before dawn to check on goats or prepare pottage. The walls were made of timber and wattle. Roofs were straw patched with care each year. Floors were dirt, swept daily. And the hearth was the center. Around it, people warmed hands, cooked food, dried clothes, told stories, and quietly stared into flames. The hearth wasn't just fire, it was family. Outside, life was shared. Neighbors knew each other's dogs, each other's babies. A child might wander into another home for a crust of bread or a quick scolding. Privacy was not prized. Togetherness was survival. And in those days, before whispers of sickness, there was no reason to think tomorrow would be any different than today. Villages did not live in isolation. Paths crisscrossed fields and forests, connecting one hamlet to another. Merchants followed them with carts of wool, spice, glass beads. Pilgrims wandered with walking sticks, quiet songs on their breath. Messengers trotted past, mud splashing up their boots. And sometimes strangers came, bringing stories from cities, rumors from ports, news from distant cathedrals. No one knew how far the world stretched, but they knew it was wide and full of voices. Still, the pace was gentle. Travel took days, and resting places were part of the journey. A traveler might stop at a monastery and be offered soup and straw bedding, or find shelter beneath the stable's eaves. There was trust in this rhythm. The world might be big, but it moved slowly. Predictably, daily life was built on repetition. Routines were not burdens, they were anchors. Each day, the baker mixed dough with the same cracked bowl. The shepherd called his sheep with the same whistle. The washerwoman scrubbed with a rhythm she had learned from her mother. Work was physical, but meditative. It kept the mind busy and the heart steady. And when the sun began to sink, the village exhaled. Tools were set down, aprons were hung. A rooster might crow once more, confused by the dusk. In the stillness, people whispered their evening prayers. To saints, to stars, to the Virgin, to no one in particular, and then the night took them. Quietly, the year drifts forward. A soft chill lingers in the air, yet the work continues much the same until small rumors begin to wander the lanes. A merchant arrives, speaking quietly of sickness in a distant city. No one panics. It feels far away, like a storm on a distant horizon. A cobbler hears the tale and shakes his head. God tests us, he murmurs. A laundress crosses herself and returns to scrubbing. Life moves on, the sun sets, ovens warm, candles gutter in their holders. Monasteries copy letters by lamplight. Messengers carry folded parchments sealed in wax. Inside these letters, uncertain words, accounts of crowded infirmaries, of bells tolling too often, yet parchment travels slowly. By the time a letter reaches a sleepy valley, days, sometimes weeks, have passed. The world remains quiet here. Carts still creak along muddy tracks. Children still chase geese across the green. A midwife begins to carry a pouch of dried sage tied with twine. A priest advises sprinkling vinegar on doorposts. Housewives hang sprigs of rosemary above the hearth. Not fear, just caution, woven quietly into daily habits. Life keeps its slow rhythm. Sweeping, tending animals sharing bread. The scent of herbs mingles with wood smoke, a reminder that the unseen world may be nearer than believed. One evening the church bell tolls at an unfamiliar hour, then again the next week. Not alarming, just noted. Villagers pause, offer a brief prayer, and return to chores. Funerals are still quiet affairs, a small procession, candles flickering against dusk. Words are spoken softly. Earth is turned gently back over earth. Grain does not wait for rumors. Soil asks for seeds. So even with hushed talk of illness, plows cut into spring earth as they always have. Oxen breathe clouds into the cold morning light. Hands grip wooden handles, steady and sure. Occasionally someone coughs and pauses. Others watch quietly, then offer water, a cloth soaked in lavender. Work resumes. Rows extend across the valley, promising bread for months yet to come. At night, families gather a little closer. Stories lean toward hope, tales of saints who healed the sick of summers when rains finally came. A grandmother hums an old lullaby, its melody older than memory. The hearth crackles softly. Shadows dance across timber walls. Fear, if present at all, lies folded beneath blankets, kept warm by love and the steady beat of ordinary life. The first thing some notice isn't people. It's the quiet of birds. Courtyards once filled with chirping seem still. The blackbirds and finches that danced on rooftops are scarce now. Some say it's the strange winds. Others think they simply know. Still, the bread must be made. The fire must be kept. Children must be hushed to sleep with lullabies they've heard 100 times before. Shoemakers mend fewer boots now. The cloth merchant sees fewer faces in his stall. Life doesn't stop, but it moves more softly, like a town holding its breath. A seamstress begins to sew alone, humming low tunes to herself. The market square feels wider somehow. Not empty, but cautious. People speak with nods more than words. Yet the rhythm of hands doesn't change. Needles still stitch seams. Dough still rises. Children still play, though nearer to home. Salt is sprinkled on thresholds, not for flavor, but for protection. A grandmother crushes garlic with the back of a spoon and whispers a prayer over it. Lavender bundles hang above beds. A healer begins mixing vinegar with rose petals and sage, dabbing it behind ears and wrists, not because it cures, but because it comforts. Belief is a form of medicine too. Still, no one speaks of panic. There is only preparedness, a kind of gentle watching. The traveling messenger doesn't return. A young man who had gone to the nearby city did not send word back. A silence grows, not loud, but long. The postmaster runs a finger over names on a parchment list and sighs. The village priest stops by with warm broth for the postmaster's family. He lingers longer than usual, as if waiting for something that won't come. People begin to gather news in pieces. From those who passed through, from strangers in cloaks, from the shifting tone of church sermons. But still, fields are tilled, hens are fed. Life does not wait for answers. Even as news grows strange, the soup still simmers. Families still gather. Bread is broken between hands, not with knives. A father dips a piece and offers it to his child. The child smiles, half from hunger, half from habit. The fire pops. A cat stretches in its favorite corner. Grandmother begins a story that everyone's heard before, but no one interrupts. Not because it's new, but because it's safe. Predictable, like the stars above, even when the world below feels unsteady. Nights feel a little longer now. The wind outside has a different sound. Still, the ritual of sleep is the same. Blankets are layered, boots lined up by the door. A mother hums softly as she brushes her daughter's hair. The candle burns low. In the next room, someone murmurs prayers. Not loudly, not urgently, but like a habit worn smooth by time. A rhythm like waves, like breath. And then, in the deep hush of midnight, a rooster calls out once, then falls silent again. In the fields beyond the village, something is different. The wheat still sways gently and the trees still creak in the breeze. But there are fewer voices. A shepherd walks slower now, not because he is weary, but because the hillside is quieter. His sheep graze without rush, their bells softly chiming like distant lullabies. The path he once shared with a neighbor's boy now stretches ahead in stillness. Yet he keeps walking, because the sheep need tending, because the land asks for care, regardless of who is watching. When someone is gone, the village does not cry out. Instead, they tie a strip of cloth to a door. A candle is placed on the windowsill. A neighbor brings a pot of broth and a loaf of still warm bread. Words are spare. Hugs are longer. Some grief is spoken softly by the fire. Some are folded into silence. The bell tolls again. Once, slowly. Then no more. A child draws a picture in the dirt. A house, a sun, and a smiling stick figure. She doesn't say who it is. She doesn't have to. Inside homes, hands continue to move. Not out of habit now, but out of intention. A mother repairs a torn shawl, though no one may wear it soon. A boy carves a wooden toy and places it on the mantel without a word. The village weaver dyes cloth in soft lavender and hangs it to dry on the line, even though no market is planned. The act of making becomes the act of hoping. Every stitch is quite defiant. Every carved figure is a promise that hands will still create, even in stillness. Pantries begin to change. Pickled vegetables in clay jars are moved forward. Herbs once meant for seasoning are now brewed as teas. A father teaches his daughter how to seal honey in wax. Neighbors begin trading quietly, salt for oats, onions for candles. Coins pass less often now. Kindness replaces currency. Meals become simpler, yet no less sacred. The bread may be harder, the stew is thinner, but grace is still said, always. When fear grows, so do stories. Old tales are told with new purpose, fables of wandering knights who braved shadows, of mothers who healed with herbs, of animals who spoke to children in dreams. Some stories are true, most are not. But all of them serve the same quiet purpose, to pass time gently and to remind listeners of bravery, of humor, of love. A child curls into her mother's side. "Tell me the one with the talking goose again," she whispers. And so the goose returns. One more night. Night deepens. In homes across the village, candles lean low in their holders. Flames flicker, stretch, and finally fade. Smoke curls upward into rafters and out through thatched roofs. A cat shifts its paws in its sleep. Someone sighs softly. Someone else stirs, then stills. Outside, the air is cool. The stars blink gently in the blackness above. The world is quiet again, as it has been and as it will be. And tomorrow they will rise once more, to stir porridge, to sweep hearths, to carry on. As time stretches, language itself begins to soften. Words that once filled the air, greetings, laughter, barter, now come fewer and quieter. People speak less loudly in the square. Conversations drift to murmurs over loaves of bread. Children's questions are answered with gentle nods or stories instead of facts. Language does not disappear. It simply adapts. A look replaces a sentence. A hand on a shoulder means more than an entire prayer. Silence becomes its own kind of comfort, one that holds people without crowding them. Candles run low. Oil becomes harder to find, yet no one is left in darkness. Neighbors begin to share, not because they are asked, but because it feels right. One family offers a half-used wick. Another boils animal fat for tallow. A flickering lantern is carried from house to house so that children can sleep in glow, not shadow. In these small, glowing ways, the village resists despair. With every shared flame, there is a quiet refusal to give in. Washing continues. Clothes are soaked and scrubbed near the stream, though hands move more slowly now. The laughter that once echoed during laundry days is softer, nearly gone. Still, one woman hums as she scrubs, an old lullaby, barely audible over the water's trickle. Another joins in, then another. Soon, not quite a song, more like a sighing rhythm, weaves between the trees. The linens flutter on the line like little prayers. And for a moment, the hillside feels lighter. When markets grow quiet, families turn to the woods. Elderberries are gathered and turned into syrups. Nettles are boiled into soup. Mushrooms, the safe ones, are picked by practiced hands. Bark is peeled for tea. Nuts are cracked open beneath quiet fires. People begin to see their forests differently, not just as places of mystery, but of comfort. They know which tree drops the sweetest apples, which path the deer follow, which moss cushions footsteps. The woods are not feared, they are understood. Goats still bleat, chickens still scratch, dogs still curl by doorways. Animals, unaware of fear, continue their rituals. A cat brings a gift of a mouse. A donkey brays at dawn. Life for them has changed little, and somehow this is comforting. Children watch animals closely now. The cluck of a hen is a kind of reassurance. The soft nudge of a lamb is more grounding than 100 whispered words. Where language falters, fur and feather speak clearly. The world continues. Night comes, not like a blanket, but like a tide. It doesn't cover, it returns. Each night it brings a new layer of time, another chapter, another pause. Time feels different now. A week blends into another. Dates become less certain. The moon becomes the truest clock, full, then gone, then full again. People stop marking time with parchment and begin to feel it instead, in bread rising, in candles shrinking, in children growing quieter then taller. And still they sleep. They must. Meals grow simpler still, yet taste becomes something people begin to treasure. Salt, once measured loosely, is now used with reverence. Herbs dried in summer take on new value. Thyme for strength, mint for stomach aches, sage for quiet clarity. Every bite, though humble, is seasoned with more than just spice. It's seasoned with care. There's comfort in the familiar taste of barley, the warmth of leeks in broth, the sharp edge of garlic on the tongue. Even in hardship, flavor endures, gently reminding people that they are still here, still eating, still alive. Some begin to write. Not everyone can, but those who can do so with new intention, not for record keeping, not for lords or scribes, but for themselves. A monk keeps a diary, soft and plain. He writes about the light on the floor at dawn. A young woman begins to copy psalms in the margins of old pages, pausing to sketch birds and flowers beside the lines. A boy draws his family on the back of a scrap of parchment, their smiles wide, their hands all linked. In these marks they whisper across time, "We were here." Though fields grow sparse, gardens bloom, small plots behind homes, barely wider than a cloak, are tended with tenderness. Radishes are planted beside sage, lavender near lettuce. Calendula curls its bright petals toward the sun. Gardens, like the people who tend them, are quiet acts of endurance. They are not grand, but they are enough. Each seed tucked into soil is a whisper of belief in spring, in return, tomorrow. And when the first green shoots rise, it feels like a hymn sung without words. People begin to carry small things. A father ties a dried flower into his son's belt. A grandmother clutches a stone smoothed by the stream behind her home. A child wears a wooden medallion carved by her cousin. These are not charms in the magical sense, though some might say a whispered prayer over them, but rather reminders, touchstones, evidence that someone cares and that they are not alone. A token in the pocket, a feather tucked behind a beam, a shell on a windowsill, soft defenses against an invisible world. The wind shifts, clouds roll low, the rains come heavier now, or not at all. People begin to listen more to the weather, and not just as sky and cloud, but as messenger. Is a colder breeze an omen? Is an early frost a warning? Still, they tend fires. Still, they wait. The season turns slowly, sometimes too slowly, but it does turn. They count not days, but changes, of leaf, of temperature, of mood. They read the earth like a book, and it tells them quietly, keep going. Sleep, once taken for granted, becomes sacred. It arrives slowly, like a friend who waits at the door, not wishing to intrude. It doesn't come with exhaustion, but with release. People wrap themselves in wool and memory. Some pray, some hum, some say nothing at all. The night becomes more than rest. It becomes healing. A gift given one evening at a time for those who dare to believe that morning will come again. And when eyes close, the heart softens and peace like smoke rises. When answers on earth feel scarce, people begin to lift their eyes. The sky has always held meaning. Now even more so. Some read the stars, not as astronomers, but as believers in quiet signs. A brighter moon, a falling star, the sudden flight of a raven, all become omens or comforts. Villagers gather in small groups on warm nights, laying on grass, pointing to constellations. Children trace them with small fingers. Elders speak the old names in hushed tones. Orion, the seven sisters, the dragon. The stars do not speak, but they shine. And for many that is enough. At home, stories continue. Not in books, but in mirrors, in wool, in water. A mother tells a tale while braiding her daughter's hair, each twist a chapter. A shepherd sings to his flock. Songs passed down from forgotten fathers. A grandmother hums a fable into her soup, tasting memory on her spoon. Stories are shared not in libraries, but in lullabies and loaves of bread. Even a quiet glance across a hearth carries a tale, one of survival, one of tenderness, one of the soft strengths that lives where no one writes it down. Spinning and weaving go on, not just for warmth, but for rhythm. Wool is carded, twisted, spun on spindles. A thread pulled between fingertips becomes something real, something held. Weavers sit in doorways or near firelight, working gently, repeating familiar motions. Patterns are simple, but in them are years. Colors tell stories. Madder root for red, woad for blue, walnut husks for brown. Dyes are brewed, soaked, stirred like teas of memory, and the cloth that's woven is not just fabric, it's proof of skill, of purpose, of tomorrow's use. Though much has changed, the seasons do not ask permission to pass. Leaves fall when it is time. Snow arrives, gentle and still. Spring hums below frozen ground. And in this rhythm, unshaken, unhurried, people begin to find peace. Each season teaches something. Autumn teaches letting go. Winter teaches rest. Spring, patience. Summer, reward. These quiet lessons, unspoken, begin to shape how people move through the days. The wheel of the year turns, slowly, kindly. When much has been taken, giving becomes powerful. A woman leaves a loaf of bread at her neighbor's door. A boy fetches water for an elder with aching knees. A child offers a flower, drooping, imperfect but sincere, to the priest. These acts are not grand, they are not for show, but they echo deeper than any sermon. They remind people that not all things have been lost. That care, the soft, invisible kind, still moves among them like sunlight through leaves. It warms quietly. And still, people dream. Even when the world outside is quieter, their minds travel far. A miller dreams of a sunlit meadow. A young girl dreams of dancing, in shoes she's never worn. An old man dreams of his childhood, when his mother sang in a kitchen that smelled of honey and thyme. Dreams do not ask if they are allowed. They arrive like sleep, uninvited but always welcome. And so night after night the village slumbers, some with prayers, some with tears, all with dreams. The rain comes quietly, not as a storm, but as a soft mist that soaks the rooftops and trails along windows. It carries no urgency, just presence. The sound of it, a hushed rhythm on wooden beams, is as soothing as a lullaby. People listen, not with fear, but familiarity. Rain means the world is still turning, that the sky remembers them. It makes the air sweet with the scent of wet earth and time crushed beneath boots. Children lean against the shutters and count the drops. Elders draw shawls closer, nodding gently. Outside puddles grow. Inside peace settles. Cleaning becomes something more than a habit. It becomes a ritual. A woman takes her broom and, with slow motions, sweeps the floor of her cottage. Not because it's dirty, though it is, but because sweeping gives shape to her day, a rhythm, a purpose. Ashes are cleared from the hearth. Linens are aired on quiet mornings. Buckets of water are carried and poured, and the floor is scrubbed not in haste, but in care. In this cleaning there is healing, a belief that if the home is tended, the heart will follow. Not everyone prays the same way. Some fold hands and speak softly into the dark. Others light candles and kneel. Some simply sit, watching the sky, and say nothing at all. But prayer is everywhere now, stitched into routines. A muttered Ave Maria while folding linens, a whispered plea while tying shoelaces, a candle lit for someone whose name is no longer spoken aloud. It is less about asking for answers and more about presence, a gentle connection, a stillness. Around the hearth, people begin to tell stories of what things were like before the whispers, before the hush, before the changes. Someone remembers a market day when the bells rang out for joy. Another recalls a wedding, not their own, but one where the bride wore sky blue and the feast never seemed to end. Someone else talks of a distant city they visited as a child where the buildings touched the sky. These stories are not told with sadness, but with reverence. They are preserved gently, like pressed flowers in a book. One morning, a bell rings in the square. It's not the toll of mourning, but of reopening. A few merchants arrive, hesitant at first. They lay out small things: apples, thread, buttons, candles. Their goods aren't many, but their smiles are gentle. People trickle in, they nod, they barter. They speak quietly, not loudly, but with hope. The market is not what it once was, but it is alive. It's not a return to normal. It is the beginning of something new. There is no proclamation, no trumpet fanfare, but slowly, quietly, life begins again. A broken bench is mended. A garden is planted with cautious hands. A song once left unsung is hummed once more as a pot boils over the fire. Children begin to laugh more loudly. Not every day, but often enough. A dog barks, chasing chickens through a yard, and someone smiles at the chaos. There's still grief, yes, but beside it, there is gentleness. Rebuilding not through force, but through patience and love. In corners of quiet courtyards and beside cottage doors, small gardens begin to bloom again. They are not planted with grand design, but with memory. Seeds passed down from mothers, roots saved from last season, bits of rosemary, thyme, and chives poking through soft soil. Children help to dig the rows. A grandmother presses a seed gently into earth. Water is poured from a chipped jug. The plants do not grow quickly, but they grow, and in their green leaves there is hope. Not everyone tells stories aloud. Some write. A scribe in a small abbey dips his quill and slowly copies the daily weather. A young girl records the names of her neighbors in a small linen-bound book. Someone draws pictures, not of saints, but of chickens and pies and their favorite window. These are not the records kings would keep, but they are records of life, of feelings, of what made a Tuesday feel different from a Wednesday. First it's a hum, then a low whistle, then someone brings out a lute that's been gathering dust. Music begins to return like a familiar bird. Someone plays near the market. A child dances with clumsy, joyful feet. A tired voice sings while hauling water, and another joins in. Harmonies grow without trying. The songs aren't new, but they've rested, and now they return. Feasts come back, not as grand banquets, but as shared meals. Neighbors bring bowls and baskets. Someone roasts a hen. Another slices apples and honey. Bread is torn, not served. Laughter is quiet at first, then louder, then loud enough to echo. There are stories again, and toasts and moments where the weight lifts. It is not a celebration of victory. It is a celebration of being here, of still having someone to sit beside. That evening the sky was clear, stars shine again in full, with no clouds to hush them. People lay out cloaks and stretch on grassy hills. The air smells of wood smoke and wild flowers. A mother cradles her child. Two friends sit with their backs touching, speaking softly of nothing and everything. There is no music now. Just breathe, just silence, just stars. The world, having been through so much, still greets the morning with bird song. Chickens cluck. A goat calls for grain. Light spills in through the window, just like it always has. A baker opens his shutters. A woman steps outside to stretch. The air is cool and kind. There is tea and sweeping and laughter, because life, like sleep, is something that always returns, gently, quietly, again. Somewhere in a small stone cottage, a window creaks open. The shutters are worn smooth from years of use. The glass, if there is any, is old and clouded. But beyond it, life can be seen. Hens pecking in the yard, smoke curling from another roof, a cat stretching lazily on a wall. This little view, framed in wood and time, is the entire world for someone who once feared to step outside. And now they do, slowly, carefully, steadily. Fingers that once trembled with worry now find rhythm again in familiar tasks. Spindles spin, looms clack gently. A potter's wheel turns under steady palms. Children practice carving toys from scrap wood. There is comfort in doing, in making, in shaping something that will last past the next breath. The things they make are not fine, not always beautiful, but they are real, they are useful, and they carry stories in their grains and threads. Somewhere a child writes their name on a stone with charcoal. Another scratches a small poem on a piece of bark. Someone buries a little box beneath an oak tree. Inside it, a ribbon, a button, a tiny spoon. They do not know who will find it, but they want to leave something, a sign that they were here. Even if they're forgotten, even if no name is remembered, their ordinary moments may echo forward, soft as footprints in moss. Once bells rang in mourning, now they ring again to mark time, for prayer, for harvest, for gathering. The market stalls are quieter than before, but they stand. The chapel doors are open. A boy brings bread to the old woman down the lane. A midwife returns to her rounds. It's not the same village, but it is still a village, and it is alive. Now you lie here, drifting on words stitched from long ago. You are not alone, just as those before you once laid in quiet dark rooms, listening to the sound of wind, of hearths cooling, of soft breath near their cheek. You too are part of that long, gentle line. Let the memories fade. Let the names drift. What matters now is rest, the kind that weaves you back into peace. And now, our journey through history comes to a gentle close. If you're still awake, thank you for spending this quiet time with me. You're always welcome to subscribe and join me again for more softly spoken stories from the past. But for now, rest easy, breathe deeply, and drift wherever your dreams may take you. Sleep well. Good night.